What you know, Alibis? Welcome to another episode of Pretty Lies and Alibis. I'm Gigi. It's Friday, June 11th. If you're new to the show, a lot of times once cases wrap up, I will do a prison episode where we look into the handbook for the prisons that these inmates will be going to. We look at the commissary list, sample menus of food that's served there, tablet policies, and things like that. The newcomer, Bryan Kohberger, who pleaded guilty to the murders of Xana, Ethan, Kaylee, and Maddie just recently. The last time he will be in court will be on July 23rd, and that will be for sentencing. They did set aside 2 days for that, just depending on how long these victim impact statements go and everything else that comes with sentencing. So let's look at the Idaho Department of Corrections. Some of these things are specific to the maximum security prison, and this is where Bryan Kohberger will most likely live out the rest of his life, in the Idaho maximum security prison. Chad Daybell already on death row there and has been since his conviction. Lori will go back to Pocatello after her sentencing on July 25th. So starting off, we're going to do a prison cake recipe. I have a contact who's been in prison in California at a women's facility. In fact, she has been cellmates with Diane Downs, who is another infamous female inmate. So how do you make prison cake? You take crushed cookies, Coke, and then you shape that into a crust. You mix non-dairy creamer with hot cocoa and a little bit of water, which makes what sort of tastes like Nutella. And sometimes they'll go fancy and add some candy and marshmallows. Taffy can be made by kneading non-dairy creamer with pre-sweetened Kool-Aid. You add droplets of water and keep working the mix until you have a taffy consistency. Inmates get very creative with cooking in prison. In fact, if you go on TikTok, there are a ton of videos from inside prisons where people clearly have contraband cell phones and post themselves cooking right there in their cell. One of the most creative things I've ever seen is how they will sand down a metal bunk, put a hot plate underneath, and literally will fry chicken or meat right there on their bunk. Let's talk about the Idaho Maximum Security Prison. It's the only maximum security prison in Idaho. This is about 15 miles south of Boise, Idaho. It's in Kuna, Idaho. This prison houses the state's most violent male inmates. The facility opened in November of 1989 and currently has a capacity of 549 residents. The institution is secured by a double perimeter fence that has razor wire. There is an electronic detection system, and there is 24-hour armed outside patrol. The inmate population primarily consists of those in close custody and also administrative segregation residents, and it also houses death row inmates. This facility also operates the state secure mental health facility within the Idaho Security Medical Program. That place has 30 beds allocated for inmates with acute mental illness. Once Kohberger is sentenced and transported to the facility, he will be in the reception and diagnostic unit for typically 2 to 4 weeks. Phone calls will be limited, and he would not be allowed visitation. He'll be given writing materials, and once there, he will have a physical and mental health evaluation. They will assess his crime level to determine his housing, as well as whether or not he can have contact with other inmates. Former Idaho Attorney General David Leroy said he expects Kohberger will spend the rest of his life in solitary confinement. Back at the receiving unit, all new arrivals are photographed, fingerprinted, and then provided an identification number. They receive hygiene supplies, clothing, and bedding. Personal information is gathered and documented to include emergency notification contacts, religious and gang affiliations, any tattoos, and identification of potential enemies within the prison system. Each offender receives a security orientation briefing which explains the facility's rules, the expectations of the inmate, and the disciplinary process. Inmates are also advised how they can request medical, mental health, religious, and educational services and programs. Medical staff meets with each new arrival to perform a physical exam and also to obtain a medical history. They ensure medical and prescription needs are addressed. All offenders will receive an intake mental health screening to provide a summary of potential mental health care needs, and also they will schedule a follow-up as warranted. Mental health services includes the initial assessment and evaluation of the offender, crisis intervention, and a psychological evaluation and referrals for special treatment options if needed. He will have a drug screen. They will do a test of his adult basic education. The psychological screening includes risk for self-injury behavior, medications he may be taken, and also victimization histories screening. If an inmate has a health issue, they will fill out a health services request. Those are screened based on urgency. Inmates are charged a $5 fee for a medical visit and $3 for any prescriptions that are prescribed. However, inmates will be seen and treated regardless of their ability to pay. If an inmate has a chronic illness, those fees are waived. A common complaint among all the inmates I've ever talked to was the time it takes to be seen, which is sometimes days after making the request. And this issue recently came up with Donna Adelson in court. She talked about cutting her arm and did not receive medical care for a couple of days. As far as dental, I've heard from every single inmate I've ever talked to that if you have a toothache or an abscess, you do not get a filling or a root canal, they just pull the tooth. If you have veneers like Lori does, and let's say one of those fall off, you're going to be left with that little spiky tooth that was filed down because they don't replace veneers in prison. Now, Bryan Kohberger will be classified as a close custody inmate, and with that comes 24-hour supervision. His movement within the facility will be limited, controlled, and supervised. We know Chad Daybell is on death row there. There are 9 total inmates on death row, and the one who's been there the longest is Robin Rowe. She was sentenced to death in 1993 for burning down her family home, killing her husband and 2 kids, and her motive was the insurance money. The prison was on the list in 2024 for one of the worst 15 prisons in the country. Some of the reasons cited were excessive use of solitary confinement, allegations of excessive force by staff, and subpar mental health care. In fact, there was a hunger strike last year in which 90 inmates participated. The reason for the hunger strike was frequent cell searches. The prison cited several reasons for those frequent cell searches, such as looking for fruit taken from the chow hall in order to make homemade alcohol. They say there was an increase in contraband and also an uptick in violent episodes. Inmates complained of extended time in isolation, long delays in receiving medical attention, and also a dirty HVAC system where inmates say other inmates will put urine and feces into the ducts out of spite, which you can imagine how that travels. By the way, those were cleaned after the hunger strike. The prisoners also cited the cutting of programs and religious practices that were stopped once COVID came onto the scene and had not come back as of the time of the hunger strike. Those were put back in place. That hunger strike lasted around 6 days and ended after pull-up bars were put in the recreational cages for those in isolation. Speaking of those recreational cages, they are described as chain-link metal boxes and are said to have feces and urine, both on the floors and the walls. Inmates say the smell is overpowering. Speaking of rec time, inmates in solitary confinement get 1 hour each day, and that's dependent on whether or not the prison is staffed adequately. If you're in isolation, you can participate in religious classes with one behavioral intervention class and also a non-contact visit. Inmates can receive snail mail. All letters are opened and checked for contraband as well as read by staff before being given to the inmate. As far as commissary, this is done online for the most part. You can buy individual items and then you can buy packs. There's a limit on how much you can order each time. Some facilities use a max weight of your purchase. And also, commissary is one thing they can take away from you if you're having discipline issues. For the maximum security prison, the categories are apparel, the general store, and then kits. Let's go through some of the items available to inmates from the commissary, which runs through the Access Secure Pack website. For clothing, you can get baggy joggers for $30.95. A white crew neck t-shirt is $12.66. A long-sleeved cooling t-shirt, $19. Fleece sweatpants, $38. A 3-pack of socks is $5.54. A wool beanie, $15.84. Wool gloves, $16.89. Nike Court Vintage Premium Shoe, $132.99. A pair of Nike Zooms are going to set you back $135. Rawlings Cross Trainers shoes are $63.34, and if you want those with Velcro, you're going to pay the same price. A pair of boxer briefs, $10.56, and a pair of boxer shorts, $12.66. A hat is $26.39, and then a Dry Pro short sleeve shirt, $40.12. The only thing they have listed for music is a guitar pick for $1. For toiletries and groceries, I went and compared to just a standard national grocery store chain and found a lot of this stuff is overpriced on the Commissary website. So Jergens lotion, $3.37. A tube of Aquafresh toothpaste, $8.24. Colgate, bit more of a bargain at $5.95. 18-ounce body wash and shampoo combo, $10.51, or just body wash, $11.82. If you compare the cost here to an average grocery store price, you're looking at $6.50. Beer nuts, $8.89. Muffins and individual cakes are between $1.50 to $2. A single hot tea bag, 40 cents. A small pack of sliced pepperoni, $5.81. 3.5 ounces of instant coffee, $8.95. And 15 ounces of coffee creamer, $13.50. Y'all, I will never go to prison, but if I did, I would need a GoFundMe for my coffee fund. A 3-ounce bag of Cap'n Crunch cereal, $3.65. The Caramello mini chocolates, $12.79 for a bag. A standard size of Flaming Hot Cheetos, $9.16. As far as just chips in general, for a regular size bag, it runs between $7 and $9. Doritos run around $3 to $5 in a grocery store for a full bag. You can get the Seal Pack tuna or salmon for $4 to $6. A regular size pack of Chips Ahoy cookies, $10.15. A single protein bar, $4.56. Different seasonings you can buy between $2 and $3. One serving of instant cream of wheat, $6.07. A sealed pack of yellowfin tuna steak, $3.95. For bags of cereal, the average cost is between $6 and $7. For a sealed bag of roast beef with gravy, $7. A bag of beef taco filling, $4.18. A bag of Rice-A-Roni, $6.98. Compare that to $2.50 in the average grocery store. Hormel Warm and Eat Salisbury steak meal, $7.11. Cereal straws, $3.95. An 8-pack of blueberry donuts, $9.28. Compare that to around $4 in store. A single beef stick, $4.41. A box of Club crackers, $6.50. Compare that to $2.99 at a grocery store. Coconut Dream cookies, a 12-pack, $8.85. A 6-pack of pudding, $4.45. In store, you can get those for less than $2. Spicy marinade, $6.41. In store, you can get that for around $3. A pack of Cosmic brownies, $6.35. Compare that to $3 in store. Ramen, $2.50. We all know that's $1 or less in stores. 13 ounces of Nutella, $10.31 compared to $4.75 in store. And then Tiny Bites, these are the little miniature cones that are filled with chocolate, $8.75. You can buy those for around $4 in stores. What about tablets? Well, they are allowed tablets at the prison. And according to the Department of Corrections website, each inmate will be provided a tablet for free, but this is currently on hold, but they say they are getting closer. This is due to an agreement with the company that provides the tablets. And if you don't have one already, you're out of luck because they are out of stock for tablets you can buy. Now, for these tablets, for the most part, it does require money on the account to do most things. Although in Idaho, inmates do get access to free FM radio, some ebooks, a couple of games, and a few other applications. Some facilities may give so many minutes a month for free, but otherwise, each email, text message, anything like that, it costs money. They are able to rent movies and TV shows, but these are not iPads that can access the internet or social media freely. It's very controlled. However, on TikTok, I did see inmates that are jailbreaking their iPads and able to roam around the World Wide Web just like me and you. These tablets have the ability to make voice calls, video calls. You can send and receive emails, text messages, and send and receive photos and videos. They can also send and receive e-cards, and there's typically a law library on these tablets. The website does say there's access to movie, TV shows, music, games, podcasts, audiobooks, news and sports, and internet radio. There's educational, vocational, and therapeutic content as well as rehabilitative programs and activities, such as knowledge-based games and books that could be available on the tablets. Again, this is not free for the most part, so let's break down some of the cost of certain services on the tablet. Inmates can receive emails for free. That is prepaid by the sender, but the sending party will need to purchase stamps and also put money on the inmate's books for them to be able to respond or do any of the other activities we just talked about. When I am emailing somebody in prison, I typically will prepay for their response. It's kind of a common courtesy if you're communicating with an inmate and you're emailing them to go ahead and pay for that response in advance. For the tablets in Idaho, one email costs 35 cents for the inmate or the sender, whoever is sending it. You can also buy stamps in bulk. 5 stamps are $1.75. You can get 10 stamps for $3.50. 20 for $7, or 30 for $10.50. Videograms cost 3 stamps each, or around $1.05. For snail mail, inmates can receive money orders or cashier's checks, photocopies, photographs with a max size of 5x8, and you cannot send Polaroid photos that have those layers. They can't receive any publications that didn't come directly from the publisher or approved bookstore, and I read they have taken Amazon off their approved list of senders. They can receive clippings from newspapers or magazines, but they have to be related to immediate family, such as birth announcements, weddings, and obituaries. They cannot receive stickers, postage stamps, or envelopes, but they can receive envelopes where the stamp and the return address label have been placed previously to being sent to the inmate. No greeting cards that are padded, laminated, have music, or larger than 8x10. When an inmate is setting up their visitor list, it typically takes 2 to 4 weeks for that visitor to be approved, and is also subject to the custody level of the inmate. A lot of prisons are switching to tablets for video visits just to make it a lot easier. Now, one of my contacts in prison talk about the risk financially that families take when they travel to prisons for in-person visits. She's had family travel by plane or car. They have to get a hotel and still not make that visit if there is a lockdown, a staff shortage, or if the inmate is disciplined. And there are rules for visitors. Of course, you cannot bring anything to give to an inmate, and there is a dress code. If you're visiting an inmate, you cannot wear anything that bears your midriff, anything see-through, no sleeveless shirts, shorts, tube tops, or tank tops, no low-cut V-neck tops, halter tops, extremely tight or revealing clothing. You can't wear dresses or skirts that go above the knee. no sexually revealing attire, and nothing gang related. You also cannot wear rubber slippers or flip flops like Crocs or just slides. What about restitution? So, my contact owes restitution, and a fixed amount will come off any deposit that she gets into her account. Whether or not that's the case in Idaho, I'm not sure, but it typically is common to do that. What do they eat in the Idaho Department of Corrections? So, I found a sample menu online. A lot of inmates cannot afford to buy food in the commissary, so it becomes its own currency in the prison system for favors or pretty much anything you could imagine. But if you do not have money for commissary, here's what your meals will look like, and they rotate. For breakfast, bran flakes, biscuits, country gravy, hash browns, oatmeal, pancakes, French toast, scrambled eggs, and scrambled hash. You get fruit, biscuits, and your typical morning beverages like coffee or juice. For lunch, they rotate turkey salad, PB&Js, veggie sticks, potato chips, ham salad, deli meat, and bread. For dinner, some of the menu includes spaghetti, a tossed salad, beans, fish, a beef burrito, pizza, or hamburgers. So that's kind of it. I know a lot of my listeners have always liked these episodes where we go down the commissary list just to get a glimpse of what's available to the inmates and the tablets too. A lot of people have a problem with inmates getting tablets, but I also see the prison side of it is used as a privilege. So it cuts down on bad behavior because most prisoners enjoy their tablet, and it cuts down on the violence inside the prisons because they will yank those away from an inmate the minute they act up. So that's it for today. Hope you guys have a good rest of your evening, and we will see you soon.